established by Europeans in the Americas, founded by Bartolome Colon, the brother of the great Admiral Christopher Columbus, in August of 1496. But he settled it on the east bank of the Osama River. The park on the left was the military plaza. Here we see the Metropolitan Cathedral, and in the center, the monument to the discoverer, Christopher Columbus, which is the work of the French sculptor Ernest Gilbert. The Indian who's at the foot of the grouping is not the Cacique Anacona, but a generic representation of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The local people have baptized her as Anacona, however, in honor of the most famous queen of the Taínos.
Je veux vous parler de moi-même. Je veux faire la traduction. Ok, je veux vous faire la traduction. Les autres vont entendre comme ça, mais je vous fais la traduction en français. Saliendo a la fundó Americano del Church in Alpha.
Head now through Isabel the Catholic Street, named in honor of the Spanish queen who offered to pawn her jewels to finance Christopher Columbus's expedition to discover this new world. This street, which is known as Commerce Street, was the street of the market and other important businesses. Until the end of the past century, the main offices of commercial banks were here. To the left and right are the buildings that replaced the colonial homes, helping to create an unbalanced urban vision. Fortunately, not through the bank's fortunes, the colonial homes that are located to the left were untouched. November 10th of 1990, UNESCO declared the colonial city of Santo Domingo to be a monument to world culture for its historical value, its influence on the architecture and urbanization of America, and for its association with deeds and successes of universal importance. And that today is the French Hotel, formed part of the San Nicolas de Bari Hospital, the first European hospital in the New World. The modern buildings along here were constructed upon the ruins of the hospital. The white with red brick chapel of Alta Gracia, which is within the modern church built of reinforced concrete, was the hospital's original chapel. It is dedicated to the worship of the Virgin of Alta Gracia, High Grace. The painting of the image of a Virgin and Child in a manger is considered to be the first nativity scene in the Americas. There is some documentation indicating that worship of the image of the Virgin of Altagracia actually began here before it spread to other sites on the island. To the right is the house of San Pedro, St. Peter, an elegant 16th century mansion. Don Jose Marti, father of Cuban independence, stayed here during his visit to the city. Street. The white with red brick chapel of Altagracia, which is within the modern church built of reinforced concrete, was the hospital's original chapel. It is dedicated to worship of the Virgin of Altagracia, High Grace. The painting of the image of the Virgin and Child in a manger is considered to be the first nativity in Duarte Street. Before city councils demanded the right to name streets, it was the public that baptized them for a person, an event, or special characteristic of the street. Now we're on the street that was once called Street of the Martyrs. When Francis Drake held everyone in the city hostage in 1586, his fierce corsairs captured 2 monks in the Dominican church who tried to stop the sacrilege being done to the main altar. The savage gang made fun of the defenseless monks. They humiliated them, beat them, and tortured them without mercy, finally hanging them from a tree whose branches were above the street. Thus the name, Street of the Martyrs. Crossing the Calle El Conde, Street of the Count, an important and traditional commercial center, today exclusively for pedestrians. Anything you might desire in Santo Domingo can be found on the Calle El Conde. The right is the Tostado House, which today is the Museum of the Dominican family. On exhibition here are the furnishings and domestic accoutrements from the 18th and 19th centuries. We've arrived at our station, and the Colonial Choo-Choo thanks you for the distinction that you, as our passengers, bestow upon us. It's your enjoyment of our tour that makes us happy. Gracias. Thank you.